My name is Daniel Kincaid, and today I'm going to share a story that still burns behind every breath I take. The story of how a quiet son, the one everyone forgot, turned the tables on his own family. It's a story about power, truth, and what happens when the invisible finally steps into the light. You won't want to miss this one. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your words remind me that every story, no matter how painful, can reach someone who needs it. They didn't just ignore me, they laughed. My parents, Henry and Margaret Kincaid, looked straight at me across a crowded room and chuckled like my entire life was a joke. My father's voice sliced through the laughter. "You'll never measure up to your brother." The words didn't sting this time. They burned clean. My hands quivered, but my tone stayed steady. "Then let him handle every expense," I said. "I'm done sending money." The stillness that followed felt heavier than a storm. My mother blinked, her confusion sharp as glass. "What money? We never got anything from you." And that was the moment I realized. The people I loved most had learned to forget me so completely. They'd erased even the help that kept them standing. The fundraising banquet at the Grand Meridian Hotel glimmered like a museum of wealth. Through the tall windows, Ironwood Lake reflected the last blush of early summer light. Every table was dressed in silver and orchids that cost more than a worker's monthly rent. At the front, under a shining banner that read, "Tribute to Dr. Nathan Kincaid, Director of Pediatric Surgery, St. Avalon Health Institute," my brother stood in his perfect gray tailored suit, smiling like a man carved from confidence. I sat near the back. Table 23, pressed against the service doors. The kind of seat meant for someone you'd rather not claim. My plain tumbler sat untouched while others toasted with crystal flutes of champagne. My cream badge simply read, "Guest, Mr. Daniel Kincaid." No title. No recognition. Up on stage, my parents stood beside Nathan as though presenting a national hero. My mother's diamond studs glittered under the chandeliers. My father's stiff posture screamed triumph. Every laugh from their table echoed with pride, as if they'd raised perfection itself, not the same man who once borrowed my sedan and never returned it. The applause thundered when Nathan spoke. He thanked the hospital, the staff, and the unwavering love of his family. I raised my glass of water because no one had offered me champagne and took a long, slow sip. It tasted like iron, like swallowed resentment. Then my father leaned close, smiling for the crowd. His words came out smooth, deliberate. "You'll never measure up to your brother, Daniel." Something in me went cold. I set the glass down, looked him in the eye, and said quietly, "Then let him handle every expense." "I'm not sending another dollar." My mother spun toward me, startled. "What money?" "We never received anything." The nearby laughter died mid-breath. Even the background instrumental ensemble seemed to pause. My brother's voice still carried from the stage, full of gratitude and sacrifice, while the truth cracked open right beneath his speech. They genuinely didn't know. That was the deepest cut of all. For 6 years I'd been sending money, not once, not twice, but every month like clockwork. The secure pay system logged each transfer, $3,200, same day, same time. It wasn't charity. It was duty. My father had retired early after a back injury. My mother's savings had dried up. And Nathan, the family miracle, was scraping by as a hospital resident. I'd just earned my first promotion at Solvian Enterprises. I wasn't wealthy, but I was steady. So I set up the automatic deposits to my parents' joint account in Briarfield, tagging each one. For Mom and Dad. Love, Daniel. At first, I checked the balance every few months. Then I stopped. I trusted them. Or maybe I wanted to believe they'd notice even once. But every visit home chipped away at that illusion. My mother would beam at dinner and say, "Nathan's been so generous." And I'd smile back, pretending that generosity had ever come from him. That night, as the applause swelled again, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Email, Solvian Enterprises. Confirmation needed. $520,000 charitable funding grant. St. Avalon Health Institute. I froze. The research wing Nathan had just bragged about, the one he claimed was secured through family and partners, was waiting for my authorization. He didn't know. Nobody did. The forgotten son sitting in the shadows held the final signature that could make or break his shining career. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of being invisible. It was dangerous because of it. My mother used to smile across the breakfast table, resting her hand on Nathan's arm as she said, "He helps us every month." Such a thoughtful son. I'd refill her orange juice, say nothing, and pretend it didn't matter. Announcing that their golden boy was spending my money wouldn't fix anything. Back then, I mistook silence for peace. But silence, I'd later realize, is just another way to let yourself fade. The transfers kept going. Month after month, year after year. My parents spoke proudly of new appliances, their remodeled kitchen, the cruise they'd taken. Each time they credited Nathan, I just nodded. I didn't need applause. I only wanted them to live comfortably. Then came the single mistake that unraveled everything. During the previous autumn, while preparing my tax documents, my accountant asked for verification of the account I used for family support. It sounded routine. I logged in, expecting to download a simple statement, but what I saw made my stomach tighten. The account listed my father, Henry Kincaid, as the primary holder. But the secondary wasn't my mother. It was Nathan. At first, I thought it had to be a clerical mix-up. That night I called my mother. Her voice was bright and unbothered. "Oh, yes," she said cheerfully. "Nathan helps manage things. You know how your father forgets his passwords? It's just easier that way." That one line hit harder than any insult. My brother had full access. Every payment I'd made for 6 years, every dollar, had passed through his hands. The next morning, I requested the full transaction history. There it was, 60 transfers, $3,200 each, and within days of each deposit, the same withdrawals, to an account labeled NK Strategic Holdings, short for Nathan Kincaid Investments. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. The money hadn't gone to household repairs or medical bills. It had vanished into whatever self-serving projects he was running behind his immaculate reputation. Strangely, I wasn't livid. Not yet. Just numb, as if something inside me had been quietly bleeding for years, and I was only now seeing the wound. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was investing in them. Maybe it was a long-term surprise. But the truth was simpler and crueler. He was living large on the story of his selflessness, funded by my blind loyalty. Weeks later, during another family dinner, my mother lifted her plain tumbler and toasted. To Nathan, every parent dreams of a son so responsible, so generous. Everyone clinked glasses. I smiled faintly and said nothing. Driving home, her words echoed in my head until they turned hollow. That night I made a silent promise. When the truth surfaced, it would surface my way, and fate didn't keep me waiting long. Another fundraising banquet was announced. Same grandeur, same golden chandeliers, same crowd that worshipped Nathan's every move. But before that night came, my ordinary workday began like any other. I stepped into the elevator of Solvian Enterprises, riding up to the 45th floor, where the skyline cut through clouds and the air itself smelled like polished ambition. Most people assumed I did some modest desk job. Spreadsheets, budgets, quiet stability. The truth, I was the director of global finance. I managed billions. My pen could alter stock valuations, and my judgment could end a career before lunch. Inside Solvian, they called me the Silent Hawk, the one who watched cash flow the way a falcon tracks movement below. Steady, focused, unflinching. My assistant, Clara Benton, slipped into my office carrying her tablet, calm as always, voice precise enough to make bad news sound manageable. "You've got an international request in your inbox," she said. I opened the email. The subject line alone made my pulse jump. Solvian International. Charitable funding request. Osaka Division, St. Aveline Pediatric Fellowship. $520,000, proposed by Dr. Nathan Kincaid. The message itself was brief, cold, professional. Funding pending CFO approval. Noted justification, secured through family partnership. That last phrase, family partnership, felt like poison disguised as gratitude. Clara hesitated. Should I prepare it for signature? I shook my head. Not yet. Then I opened the attached documents, and my world tilted. There it was, a formal letter signed by Nathan, addressed to the St. Avalon Health Institute, claiming that our family and our partners at Solvian Enterprises had guaranteed the grant. He had used my company's name, my authority, without ever asking. I moved mechanically, the way I did when balancing ledgers under pressure. I began collecting proof, internal bank statements, email chains, wire histories. I called a trusted contact at the bank requesting confirmation of every account Nathan touched. Each file was a thread. I followed them one by one, weaving together a picture that reeked of arrogance and entitlement. When the city lights flickered on that night, I stood by the glass wall, looking over Fairhaven's glowing skyline. Each window in the grid looked like a private ledger, every light a story of what people hide. Family partnership. The words replayed in my head like an insult dressed in civility. If I exposed him and was wrong, I'd destroy everything, my career, my parents, even what was left of my name. But if I stayed silent and he'd truly crossed the line, then I'd become part of the lie that fed his legacy. I didn't sleep much that night. By dawn, I'd drawn up a list of every record I'd need to verify. A quiet, methodical plan that felt less like paperwork and more like sharpening a blade. Driving back to Briarfield felt like returning to a theater where everyone still remembered their lines, except me. The oak and birch trees blurred by in streaks of green and gold, and every mile peeled back another memory I wasn't ready to revisit. My parents' house looked almost unrecognizable. The paint shimmered fresh. The driveway had been relaid, and a polished brass plaque glinted by the gate. A gift from Dr. Nathan Kincaid. I stopped for a moment, staring at the words that marked my absence. That plaque should have carried my name, not his. I'd paid for every nail, every brick, every quiet thank you that never came. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and new furniture, a home remodeled on borrowed virtue. Dinner unfolded with the same scripted politeness as always. My father recited stories about Nathan's upcoming interview on the Global News Channel, his voice rich with admiration. My mother nodded proudly, telling everyone how their younger son had always put family first. I smiled where politeness demanded it. Picking a fight over roasted chicken didn't seem worth it. Halfway through the meal, I asked, too casually, if Nathan had ever mentioned the St. Avalon Health Institute funding during his calls. My father's chest swelled with pride. "Oh yes," he said. "Nathan's been working with major donors. Such a relief to know our son has everything under control." I pressed my napkin flat against my lap, swallowing words that would have shattered the illusion. The contrast made me sick, their pride built entirely on lies that had drained my own accounts. After dinner, my mother handed me her handheld device and asked me to reset her password. "You're better at these things." "Dear," she said sweetly. I logged in, expecting nothing new, but froze. The joint account still listed Nathan Kincaid beside their names. My thumb hovered before scrolling down through a flood of transfers. Each entry read, "For Mom and Dad. Love, Daniel. 60 payments, $3,200 each. Within days of every deposit, the same amount was wired out to NK Strategic Holdings." I looked up, my parents chatting blissfully about gardening and weekend plans, oblivious to the theft happening right under their roof. My vision blurred for a second. Searching for something to steady myself, I opened a nearby drawer and froze again. Among folders of receipts lay a printed investment sheet for Neurotech Biosciences. The red margin screamed, "Investor, Dr. Nathan Kincaid. Loss, 90 units. The date matched the month. I'd increased my monthly transfer to help with a supposed roof repair. The same month my father bragged about new shingles Nathan insisted on paying for. The irony was surgical. My generosity had become the camouflage for his debts. I stared until the lines blurred, my unsteady hands gripping the paper. My mother smiled across the table, tracing the wood grain with contentment. Still living inside the story Nathan had built for her? That night I left quietly, walking to my sedan with a roll of printed statements clenched in my jacket pocket like a hidden blade. Sitting behind the wheel, I swore that the truth would not whisper this time. It would roar under lights bright enough to burn away every excuse. Exactly a week later, fate staged its encore. I stood once more in the Ocean View Pavilion, under chandeliers blazing like halos over a roomful of polished liars. The banner stretched across the stage. Recognizing distinction, Dr. Nathan Kincaid. The symmetry was almost cruel. I arrived early and took my place at the back, the same table near the service corridor where the invisible usually sit. Waiters drifted past with trays of crystal flutes, each ignoring my empty spot as if rehearsed. At the front, cameras flashed. My parents stood beside Nathan, basking in reflected glory. My mother, radiant in a designer gown I had unknowingly funded, took the microphone. Her voice wavered, not from emotion but from pride too large to hold. "Nathan," she said, smiling up at him, "has given everything for this family. He's taken care of us through it all." The room erupted in applause. Forks tapped glasses. My pulse beat in my ears. I lifted my plain tumbler, its reflection catching the light like a false halo. Then my phone buzzed. Email. Solvian Asia Division, confirmation needed. $520,000, funding to St. Avelin Health Institute. Timestamp 9:10 p.m. Deadline 10 hours. Proposed by Dr. Nathan Kincaid. Note: funding secured through family partnership. It was official. Nathan had turned his lie into a corporate fact. He'd forged my authority, tying my company to his deception. Across the room, I caught sight of Patrick Lowell, a regional delegate from St. Avelin. He approached, smiling politely. "Excuse me," he said. "You're Daniel Kincaid, right? Director of Global Finance at Solvian?" I nodded slowly. "That's right. I thought so," he said, still smiling. "We're thrilled about the partnership." I cut him off quietly. "It's not what you think." The smile on his face faltered. "I see." "No," I said, meeting his gaze. "You will soon." As the applause faded, my mother's voice rose again over the mic, her tone gentle but deliberate. "We've always been proud of both our sons," she said, pausing just long enough for the room to remember which one really mattered. And for the first time, I was ready to show them just how wrong they were. "If we ever had another son," my mother said, laughing lightly, "we'd be lucky if he turned out half as good as Nathan." The crowd laughed. My father laughed hardest. Something inside me stopped. Not shattered, not screamed, just stilled. Like a coin finally landing flat after spinning too long. The scrape of my chair against the marble floor cut through the laughter like a blade. Heads turned. I walked toward the stage, calm as if every step had already been rehearsed in my head. I reached for the spare microphone and said evenly, "Then let him handle every expense from now on. I'm done sending money." A hush dropped over the ballroom so suddenly it seemed to pull the air out of the room. My mother blinked, disoriented, her voice thin. "What are you talking about?" I unlocked my phone, opened the secure pay system, and pressed the button that had chained me to their comfort for 6 years. "I'm canceling the transfers," I said. Effective immediately. A faint ping echoed through the sound system. The quietest sound in the room, yet somehow the loudest. My father's jaw locked. Nathan's expression cracked for the first time that night. The room rippled with whispers, and just like that, the storm began. The Grand Meridian Hotel dissolved into chaos. Conversations collided. The orchestra stopped mid-note. My mother's voice cut through it first, sharp and trembling. "Money? What money, Daniel? We've never received a cent from you." I looked at her. Not livid, just steady. Because you were never the one receiving it. I stepped to the AV console beside the stage, connected my phone to the LED screen, and waited. The projection appeared in bold numbers across the backdrop. 60 payments, $3,200 each, labeled for Mom and Dad. Love, Daniel. That's $192,000, I said quietly, all sent over 6 years, every month. Same note. The ballroom fell utterly silent, not with awe, but recognition. The kind of silence that happens when laughter curdles into fear. If you don't believe me, I added, check your account. My mother's unsteady hands fumbled with her phone. Seconds passed like hours. Then her face went white. There's only $540 left, she whispered. My father snatched the phone, disbelief twisting into anger. That can't be right. It's right, I said, because the account has another holder. I turned toward Nathan. You, he swallowed, voice wavering. That's not fair. I only helped manage their finances. I never touched a dollar that wasn't part of the investments. You mean crypto? The failed startup, Neurotech Biosciences? His eyes darted around the room. You don't understand. No, I said. I understand perfectly. You took their trust and my money and you wrapped both in a story that made you look like a savior. The murmurs thickened, a rising tide of shock. I turned back to the LED screen and tapped play. My recorded call with the bank filled the room. Account accessed by secondary holder, Nathan Kincaid. The sound echoed through the fundraising banquet, leaving no room for denial. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father just stared, disbelief giving way to fury. I could have stopped there, but silence had been my prison for too long. I dialed a number and turned on the speaker. A deep voice answered at once. Daniel, we're in Osaka now. The board needs confirmation. Are you approving or denying the St. Avelin grant? Every head turned toward me. I let the pause stretch, then said clearly, we're denying it. Effective immediately. Redirect the funds to a new program. The Hidden Balance Grant Program. The air vanished. You could almost hear the sound of reputations collapsing. From the front row, Dr. Fiona Reyes, director of the St. Avelin Health Institute, rose to her feet. Her chair scraped sharply across the marble. Dr. Nathan Kincaid, she said, voice cold, you assured us the funding was secured. You claimed it was finalized through Solvion. Nathan's face had turned ashen. There must be a misunderstanding. Before he could finish, Patrick Lowell, the regional delegate, spoke up. There isn't. You misrepresented a corporate partnership to our entire board. That's fraud. My father's voice broke through next, bright red with rage. Daniel, what have you done? You're destroying your brother. I turned slowly. No, Dad. He destroyed himself. I just stopped protecting the lie. Nathan looked trapped, small in a way I'd never seen before. Cameras flashed. Every angle caught him unraveling. For a fleeting moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. Then Dr. Reyes spoke again, tone firm as a verdict, effective immediately. Dr. Nathan Kincaid is suspended pending investigation for financial misconduct and ethical violations. Gasps swept the ballroom. Like a gust through dry leaves, I set the microphone back on the stand. Truth doesn't destroy. It exposes what was false. No one moved. No one breathed. I disconnected my phone, pocketed it, and walked away. The flashes from the cameras no longer burned. They simply lit the path out. Outside, the Fairhaven air stung cold against my skin. Behind me, I could still hear the faint echo of my name bouncing through the ballroom, the sound of a family legacy breaking apart. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. For years, I'd been buying peace with silence. Tonight, I'd balance the ledger. The next morning dawned gray, undecided between rain and sun. Riverbend City woke to the scandal splashed across every headline. Kincaid Brothers fallout. From celebration to scandal. The photo beneath showed me mid-sentence. Microphone in hand, Nathan beside me looking cornered. At Solvion Enterprises, my inbox flooded. Board memos, press calls, internal alerts. The ballroom video had gone viral overnight. Even the Osaka desk called it the Kincaid Reckoning. Clara Benton appeared in my doorway, voice cautious. Should I prepare a statement? I shook my head. No, I won't defend the truth. It can stand on its own. The printer hummed steadily beside me, spilling 5 years of bank records, transaction proofs, and internal audit reports into a neat stack. I stared at the pile. Paper, ink, and evidence, realizing just how much of my life fit neatly into documentation. Proof of what silence had cost. By the time the sun slipped past the skyline, I was already driving toward Briarfield, back to the house where everything had begun and unraveled. My parents were waiting for me at the dining room table, both of them looking years older than I remembered. The air carried a weight that didn't belong to anger anymore, just quiet grief and disbelief. My father spoke first, his tone frosted and clipped. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed your brother's career. You've dragged this family through the dirt. I set the tan legal folder on the table and met his eyes. No, Dad. I didn't destroy anything. I only told the truth you refused to see. My mother hesitated before pulling the folder open. The first few pages trembled in her unsteady hands. Her voice wavered halfway through a line. Why? Why is Nathan's name on every single transfer? I stayed silent. Some answers don't need sound. They just need time to sink in. Then my phone buzzed. A new message slid onto the screen. Subject, I messed up. From Nathan. He confessed to everything. He'd drained the account, poured the money into crypto and a collapsing biotech company, Neurotech Biosciences, then lied to keep his halo polished. When the investments tanked, he convinced himself that silence was mercy, that our parents didn't need to know. The message ended with, I'm sorry. I don't know how to face any of you. I printed that email and placed it beside the evidence. My father turned the next page, his hand shaking. My mother's eyes moved quickly, then stopped. He refinanced the house, she whispered. He took out a loan in your father's name. $135,000. 25 days to repay it, or we lose everything. Tears came fast and soundless. Daniel, she said softly, can you help us? We have nothing left. I looked at them, people I'd spent half my life rescuing from disappointment. Strangely, I wasn't livid. I was composed, almost steady. I'll help, I said finally, but only if things change. If I clear the debt, it happens my way. That evening, back in my Fairhaven apartment overlooking the river, my phone rang again. Victor Hahn, chairman of Solvian Enterprises, spoke in his usual measured tone. Daniel, your name is everywhere. Reporters, shareholders, regulators. But the board stands with you. You acted with integrity, not malice. They've voted. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to President of Global Operations. You've earned the right to rebuild, not to retaliate. When the call ended, I stared at the skyline reflected in the water. Power, I realized, wasn't about control or revenge, it was about restraint, the kind that turns chaos into clarity. That night, I drafted a contract for my parents. I'd pay off the loan, restore their credit, and secure their home. In return, they'd commit to 8 months of family therapy with Dr. Leah Garner, the same psychologist who had once guided me through my own burnout. No exceptions. No pretending. Only the truth. The next day, they signed quietly. My mother's tears dotted the paper, her hand quivering as she wrote her name. When I left, I folded the pages, creased, damp, but finally honest. Driving home, one sentence echoed in my head. Love without honesty is duty. Duty without honesty is bondage. Early summer arrived in Briarfield like a quiet apology. The oak and birch trees shimmered gold in the sun. My parents' house stood steady, repaired, repaid, redeemed. They'd kept their promise. 24 therapy sessions with Dr. Garner. I attended half of them. There were tears, long silences, and awkward confessions. But for the first time, There were no comparisons, no measuring tape between me and Nathan. 10 months later, I boarded a plane to Riverbend City for the launch of the Hidden Balance Grant Program, the foundation built with the same $520,000 Nathan once tried to claim. 100 students, people who'd been overlooked or underestimated, were about to receive full scholarships. I saw fragments of myself in every single one. The ballroom at the Ocean View Pavilion gleamed beneath soft chandeliers. When I stepped onto the stage, my parents sat in the front row, smaller than I remembered, but present. I used to think silence was strength, I began, that standing behind others meant loyalty, but silence without truth is surrender. Tonight, this foundation stands for those who were never seen, not because they lacked worth, but because no one bothered to look. Applause filled the hall, but my eyes went only to my parents. My mother was crying. My father was clapping slowly, eyes wet, face open in a way I'd never seen. After the ceremony, they came to me. My father handed me a wooden keepsake box wrapped in paper. Inside was my restored framed portrait from college, the one they'd lost years ago. Carved into the wood were 6 words that stopped my breath. "We truly see you now." No trophy could match that. I hugged them both, not because everything was healed, but because healing had finally begun. Weeks later, a call came from Silvergate. It was Elise Moran, Nathan's ex-wife. Her tone was fragile. "Nathan's in rehab. He got a suspended sentence for the drug charges. He wanted me to tell you he's sorry, and that he'll pay you back someday." I stared out at Briar Street, traffic crawling under the city lights. "Tell him he doesn't owe me money," I said. "He just needs to stop lying and start living like a man who still remembers what truth feels like." Before hanging up, I donated anonymously to cover his treatment under the foundation's name. Some debts, I realized, are meant to be forgiven, not collected. A month later, my parents invited me home. The meal was simple: roasted chicken, soft laughter, and no mention of titles or wealth. For the first time, dinner felt real. Near the end, my father raised his plain tumbler. "We can't change the years we were blind," he said, "but we can learn to see." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. A year after the scandal, I stood again beside Ironwood Lake. The city shimmered across the water like a reflection that finally made sense. Justice, I realized, isn't about revenge. It's about standing in truth without needing anyone to cheer. I closed my laptop, the final report for the Hidden Balance Foundation complete. In the notes section, I wrote one last line: "Every number tells a story. Mine finally balances." When I look back now, it isn't a story about money or betrayal. It's about visibility, about a man learning that peace begins where silence ends. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice, that being dependable meant being good, but silence has a cost. Mine nearly erased me. You can give everything: your time, your trust, your paycheck, and still remain invisible if others have already decided who you are. What I learned, painfully and publicly, is that you can't earn love by being useful. You earn peace by being truthful. My brother's fall wasn't my triumph. It was the price of pretending that loyalty means blindness. When the noise faded and the anger stilled, what remained wasn't revenge. It was clear. The months that followed were messy, quiet, uncomfortable, but real. My parents listened instead of defending. My mother stopped rewriting history, and one day, without ceremony, she said, "We see you. That was worth more than every dollar I'd ever sent. If you've ever been the quiet one, the helper, the invisible supporter who carries everyone else, this story is for you." Maybe you've been told that keeping peace means keeping silent. It doesn't. Peace means speaking up, even when your voice shakes. It means walking away from tables where you're served guilt instead of gratitude. So tell me, have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your self-respect? If you have, drop a comment below. Say, "I understand," or tell me where you're watching from. I read every one. And if this story reminded you of your own strength, or the silence you're ready to break, subscribe. This space belongs to every quiet fighter who finally decided to be seen. Thank you for staying with me through it all, for listening, for feeling, for remembering that truth can be soft and strong at once. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you find your balance too, because in the end, that's what we're all trying to do, bring the numbers of our lives into balance, and finally be seen.